Hi there, and welcome to the Skylight Books author reading series. If you'd like to learn more about us and our many upcoming author events, please visit skylightbooks.com, where you can browse our inventory, buy books, and join our Friends with Benefits Club. You can also follow us on Twitter, Tumblr, and Facebook. To speak to a real live bookseller like me, please call 323-660-1175. Thanks for your support, and enjoy.
Hi. How did you guys meet each other?
The first time we met was like in 2001, right? And I was working at a laundromat.
You were there too.
And he was doing laundry, and he gave me a shirt that was like Motley Crue, girls, girls, girls all over it. And he was like, it was holy, and he was going to throw it away. And he's like, do you want this? And I was like, yeah. And that was how we met, I think. That's the first time we maybe spoke.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I think so.
My memory is cloudy.
And there was an open mic that happened there, and we did our laundry there and did the open mic with Diamond Dave, who I think one of the contributors is still in touch with Ryan, yeah? Diamond Dave. Diamond Dave, a classic San Francisco. Yeah, Diamond Dave. If you ever were in the poetry scene in San Francisco, what was the rest of his name? It was Diamond
Dave Whitaker.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. And his son's name is Ooby Dooby. His son's name is Ooby Dooby.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just thought I'd put that out there. That has nothing to do with how me and Amos just musing on the past in a way that's not interesting to anyone besides me.
But that was a really long time ago. So how did you guys come together and decide to do this and take on the project of doing a DIY magazine during a time when print was supposedly failing, and not just saying like, oh, we're going to do it online or we're just going to do a zine, but like committing to this beautiful art, full color? How did you guys do it? Take us on your journey.
It was San Francisco, 2009 or 2008 or something, and I was like, had just moved back to the city, and I was trying to connect with people, and I really wanted to photograph trans men in my neighborhood that I lived in like the Mission District, and I photographed Rocco for it, and my initial idea was to like photograph guys and then interview them, so then there would be photographs, interviews, the trans guys could speak for themselves for like the first time in media, because there was like no place where I ever saw that happening. And I thought I would, print it into like a little color zine one-off. And while I was photographing Rocco in the nude, I think.
Well, we hadn't gotten that far, actually. We were talking about how he wanted to take pictures of guys in their bedrooms and do like sort of like a trans guy butt magazine, if anyone remembers Butt magazine. And I had been performing for almost a decade. Well, I had been performing for over a decade, but I had been on the stage as a trans guy for around a decade. And believe it or not, there weren't a ton of us at that time. And there was not really any kind of visibility of trans men. There's still not really much visibility in the way of trans men. But I had never been interviewed about anything besides where I was at. So if I released an album or did anything of note that I was getting press for, they always went to, where are you at in your surgical journey? What's next for you surgically? So when Amos asked me, I was, a lot of cis people had taken pictures of me for many years, and no one, and always they were like, well, how comfortable are you in the nude? And I was like, nah, it's not gonna happen. But then when Amos, said that he was going to do this project, I was like, well, it's a totally different thing if you're with someone who has and understands your body and isn't exotifying you in this way, even if they're a well-intentioned and lovely cis person who really wants to capture the beauty of your trans body and experience.
Of your true self.
Yeah, it's different. Can you look into the mirror pensively? the classic trans picture, right, where it's like, who am I? I don't see her, and she's not whatever. So it was really different. And then when he said that what he wanted to do, I was like, holy shit. And I had been traveling for 10 plus years and kept seeing little pockets. Like, I would go to the same cities and play shows in the same cities. So I would see, like, the first time it was like one trans dude. Next time I go, it's like 3. And then the next time it's like 4 or 5. And I just kept seeing the community grow in these small pockets and thought, whoa, if you were willing to make this a bigger thing where it was like we gave it a year, and then basically Amos and I'm a Libra with a Sag rising, and he's a Sag with a Libra rising. So we were like hot air balloons. So we were drinking coffee before you took my picture in the cafe downstairs, getting super pumped about this. I was like, just back and forth ping-ponging ideas. And then it grew into like, let's take a chance. And I was like, and I'll pose in the buff for a trans guy. So that's the only picture that's ever been taken of me fully disrobed.
And sadly, it's not in the book. That did not make the cut.
No, it's not in the book. So, but we just found back issues of issue 1. So if you're dying to see what my butt looked like 10 years ago, it's in there. Looks different now.
How have you watched? You're talking about, Rocco, a little bit about how you were seeing change in like trans communities while you were traveling the country a little bit prior to doing Original Plumbing. How have you guys watched? I mean, I know it's a big question, but how have you seen the trans male community change and culture change through the lens of OP while you guys have done it this past decade?
Well, through OP, I think that
Just stacking your lens, into
right, like the way that we documented people, like through in the past 10 years, changing. I feel like we got more serious about it, about like the stories that we were telling and people that we were interviewing, because in the beginning it was very cheeky and fun. And I mean, that was the whole point of starting it, was to have fun, have a fun space. Like, let's not think too hard about it. Let's just like create this space and like take fun photographs. Celebrate our experiences, and like, let's pretend like we're in these teen magazines that we never were in. The ones that we read as kids. Like, let's pretend that everybody's like that kind of questioning in the beginning. And then I think as it got more visibility and we felt more like responsibility to share stories differently and have more people involved and not be a joke the whole time. I mean, it was never a joke, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it was
less of a sense of, less, it was more, as the audience grew, I want to say that the first thing that I thought when you asked that question is language. Language has changed. It's expansive, inclusive, and ever changing. So I think like when we started this magazine, transsexual was not a bad word. It was, and I still feel comfortable calling myself a transsexual. And I know that that's unpopular, but that's my reality. It's closest to the experience. And at this point too, I don't even feel that. I feel like man of trans experience is also a term that didn't really exist in popularity at that time, and that's how I relate to my experience now. But the word non-binary was not something that really was thrown around. Transmasculine came around maybe like a year into OP.
Genderqueer was the term that if you weren't, for folks that were not, that didn't identify as like trans male.
Yeah.
In the magazine in the early issues.
So that changed, and then that sort of changed and broadened our representation a bit to be a bit more inclusive. And I think overall, I think OP kind of opened the door. That first year especially, it was just like a skyrocket. The first issue sold out before we printed it, to the point that PayPal shut us down because we weren't shipping anything, and they wanted proof that we were actually shipping what we were selling. So they halted us being able to receive payments for that first one, and we didn't have money to pay for the magazine, so we were like, fuck.
Yeah,
Amos
pre-sales. That was it.
We thought, we'll just pre-sell and it's no big deal, but PayPal was like, you have to prove it. And then Amos made these stickers that said "scantily clad trans" with a Z, and he had already had them because he was on tour with them, and then we sent one of those away to someone to prove that we were actually shipping something, so we could continue to get money for the magazine. But
then we mailed them like a few weeks later.
Oh yeah, the magazine
it was just
did
like,
come
it
out.
wasn't like a scam.
We weren't scamming anyone. I think that it's more expansive, like sort of like just traveling. It was like more and more trans men started emerging, and I think in part that was about visibility and having options. And then another one was about access to care. So Harry Benjamin standards went away, and WPATH took the lead, and no more gatekeeping for trans people. So the trans community kind of grew in tandem, and so did our visibility in a way.
I also want to know how you guys' friendship changed as a result of doing this project for a decade.
Well, we moved in together for a period in New York, and that was funny because we've been doing the magazine for like 3 years at that point, and then we moved from San Francisco to New York, and lived together. And then there was zero boundaries about when we were working versus when we were like just being regular humans. So I remember like we would
Which
just
we're still not regular humans.
we would like wake up in the morning and be making coffee and then talking about, I don't know, maybe something that was going on in the world, and then all of a sudden, like the next sentence would be like, "What do you think about this guy for the next issue?" Or like, "What about this theme?" Or who? And like, I do remember that,
Yeah,
and it was
of
just
course.
there was like zero, like no boundaries whatsoever.
Also, not only did we move in together, we had a very thin wall that separated our head-to-head beds. So we would joke that we'd like just carve a portal to open and be like, "Excuse me, late night."
I've had an idea I'd like to share for a future issue.
So now we have different boundaries. We both are settled with other partners. No longer each other's primary.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's cute. How did you guys go? How did you go about selecting all of the different themes for each issue?
I remember in the beginning we made like a long list of just themes that we thought we could tackle. I feel like I just lost the notebook, the original notebook that we were taking all the original notes in, but it was just kind of like fun. Like, what do people talk about? Hair,
Yeah, the first
sex,
ones were like, what are trans men obsessed with? And
hair.
then- yeah, hair. Yeah, losing it, having it. Where does it grow? Do you get shoulder hair? Do you?
How many chin
no?
hairs do you have
Yeah,
today?
Exactly.
What was
Hey,
like,
YouTube.
like entertainment? Like we just wanted to. I think we just were trying to figure out different ways to tackle different different groups of people. And I love a theme, so anything to pull it all together.
Yeah. There were some themes that we talked about from the beginning that we never made that I still feel sad that we never
Like
made.
which one?
The Men of Cloth issue.
Oh, that would've
We
been
talked
good.
about that. We had it like fully listed out of like a rabbi, a shaman, a Baptist preacher, like so many different, and just never got it together. Limited resources, People, I think there was a point when Opie was really successful that people were like, they're making so much money off the community. I just want to say to anyone who wants to start a queer project, you got it wrong. That's never going to happen. You're just trying to celebrate your community. You're not shitting on a golden toilet. It's just never going to happen.
But yeah, it was really hard to. I remember now, like the Men of the Cloth one. Everyone was
The golden
so
toilet
far
issue.
away. Like it was like Vermont and like I don't know. It was also like about our accessibility. So a lot of people were in one of the two coasts. Like people in LA or San Francisco, New York, Philadelphia. That was like the easiest way for us to be able to like go and interview and photograph people in person.
And sometimes that would dictate it. Something like the Philly Trans Health Conference was really good because there was a huge gathering of people, and then we could do something like the family issue was really easy for that one because there were so many families at the Trans Health Conference. So
That was the year we set up like a photo booth at the Trans Health Conference, and anyone who wanted to be interviewed or photographed with their family members, we would like let them come by. And that's not in this issue because of a lot of people it's hard for people to consent like 10 years later if there's like children involved and things like that. But there are plenty of there actually are children in here, but not from that specific shoot.
yeah,
But that was a good one.
yeah.
How did you guys go about selecting what you're going to put in the book? I mean, everything is so good in the magazines and in the book.
It
How
was
did you
really
guys do
hard
it?
to like cut things and to be like, we'll have to kill your darlings, as they say. We went through a stack of all of them one afternoon, I remember, and I thought it was going to take like an hour, but it was like an 8-hour process, or maybe over 2 days,
Yeah.
where it took a lot longer than I thought. But we just went through every single page of every issue and made a list, and then told Feminist Press what we wanted to put in, and they're like, okay, great, now cut that by half.
I think too, like from the very beginning of the project, Amos and I were really focused on diverse representation of voices and experience. And one thing that I think we can pride ourselves on is like from the very first issue, there were people who weren't on hormones, who never had surgery, who didn't intend to have surgery. Really, just a diverse swath of the community. And I think that with the book too, we kind of were like, oh, how do we make sure that this is balanced for all kind of representation? So it's a good kind of collected version of what one issue would look like.
And some of the things are chopped down, like some of the interviews are not in there, but a photograph and a quote will remain and things like that, just so that we could try and put as much in as possible.
How did you find everybody? It's like so mind-boggling, like the variety of people from like place. I mean, you spoke a little bit about like the coasts were helpful, but there are people also who aren't in the coast. Like, how did you do it? Where'd you find everybody?
In the beginning, we did have like that a thing on our website that allowed people to submit to be models, and if they were like going to be somewhere where we were going to be, because we traveled a lot in the beginning, we would try and set up like a photo shoot very quickly.
Yeah.
And then just people that we knew.
Yeah. I think I had amassed a decent Rolodex in the beginning, so then it was really easy for themes. So if we had a theme, I would go into my brain and think like, oh, I know X, Y, and Z, and they would be willing to do this, and they all are whatever the theme was. Hairy, bald. A naturopath.
Is there a particular moment that where, or like something that happened that let you know that like that the magazine was really hitting people and hitting the culture and changing the culture?
I think just getting the New York party was huge. Feeling like people recognized us was very strange, like at different events at the time. And I think receiving letters from people, like actual letters, like handwritten letters from people, like all over the country, like thanking us, which is so sweet. Like they could have emailed, but people just like getting the magazine in the mail and then like sending us a card to the return address.
It felt really blessed from the beginning because of the response immediately when we set up a Facebook page. People were super excited. And then that PayPal thing that I talked about, that let us know that we were doing something. We were filling a need that existed that nobody else had kind of filled. And then the New York party. We had this, somebody in New York had the magazine and got really excited and was like, if you guys came out here, I would throw this party for you. And that was the first huge OP party. And it was in a 2-story place called Sugarland. And it was packed. It was mobbed. And when we got there, I remember just like it ended we left the party at 6 a.m.
Oh,
and
God.
I just couldn't believe how many people.
I was so upset at the time.
I couldn't believe how many people came for the magazine and were so excited about it. And I think that's the part that kind of breaks my heart is that I'm 40, so I don't want to go out in that way. I'm not quite 40, but in my head I'm already 40. I'm old enough that I don't want to go out all the time, but OP parties were so special because no space like that existed, and it still doesn't. There's no trans male specific gathering where dudes were ripping their shirts off, and it's cliche, right? Because we see it on Instagram every day, so we're sort of I don't know, desensitized to the power of that. But when you're in a space of sweaty, lovely, queer people celebrating each other's bodies in that way, where it's they just were free. And I've never I don't know, nothing like that exists anymore. Unless I'm wrong, maybe I'm wrong, but I haven't seen anything like that exists. And I think that was the real world physical manifestation of what we put in print, which is why it's so valuable that it was in print and not online, because it's not ephemeral. It's tangible. You hold it. It will last longer than whatever website we had or whatever Instagram photo someone posts. It's meaningful. It's something that you develop a relationship with. So to be able to put that in a physical space, that was a moment for me that really imprinted. And then the New York Times was wanting to write about us, and gay men all of a sudden were interested in the fact that trans men existed for the first time. They were like, "What's this?
Can we interview
and that
you?"
Had never, and I'm not. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was constant.
Yeah.
It was a moment.
And
when gay men
make culture, so they were like, "We've discovered something."
That was 2010.
Welcome to the world
2011.
of a different type of man. I love gay men, just to be clear.
Are you guys going to do a podcast? Don't you want them to do a podcast? I feel like I'm sitting in on your podcast right now, and it feels really good. What was the hardest part of producing the magazine?
It became a real struggle after a few years, I think. It was stressful. I burnt out really, really intensely. But I mean, the biggest struggle, I don't know. I think getting advertisers, trying to get money for it.
No one wants to advertise for a magazine about trans men.
It was amazing in the beginning because there was so many local San Francisco psychotherapists and bars and
shout out to the Tool Shed from start to
and the
finish.
Lexington Club. Oh yeah, the Tool Shed. And what's that city? Minneapolis. I don't know.
Milwaukee,
The Tool Shed is like a queer sex shop that has books and magazines, and they bought a full page ad, like almost full page from the very beginning.
First issue
and just were
till the
like,
end.
and they were like the final, like no one, I don't think anyone else really advertised in the last issue. They were the only ones. Like that's like, because it's like a whole other job to try and get advertising. And like that's a struggle.
We had no idea what we were doing.
We didn't know. We still don't, but we did
Yeah.
it.
Hand-addressed envelopes, all
Oh my gosh.
1,000. Trash bags full of magazines going to the post office with a hostile postal worker being like, oh no, you guys. In Brooklyn, I'll just say this, I've said it before, but there was this one postal worker in the Brooklyn post office that we went to, who when she would see me, she was like, no. No. And then I would be like, sorry, because she's like,
She'd say, why?
why do you do this to me? Why do you do this to me? Because we didn't know how to do it. We couldn't figure out how to we couldn't figure out how to do the computer stuff.
No, I bought one of the stampers once for the fashion issue. I remember like printing out the stamps, and then it would get clogged, and I would be spending money for stamps that were not coming out, and I was like, this is a waste.
But
But
the
I
first
tried
one, when
once.
it printed, we were like, yes, this is changing everything.
But that was it. It lasted like half of,
Yep.
maybe we printed 100 stamps that way. Oh my God.
On that note, what would you say to somebody who was wanting to do their own magazine, their own DIY magazine?
Partner up with a business partner friend. Someone who's business-minded, maybe.
Yeah.
Someone who knows the financial side of things, who won't be on the creative side.
Yes.
Because we were just like two creative people trying to figure out the business side without ever, we made a business plan in the beginning, but I don't think it made any sense.
Of course not.
Yeah.
It was
So someone
it
who
was
can
like
do
kids
that
starting a
part.
lemonade stand.
Yep.
You know what I mean? We're like,
100%.
we got this great product. Everyone's going to come. Here are all the goals. Like none of them make sense.
So I think partnering with somebody that's their strong point.
Yeah.
The structured business person that'll keep you on a schedule.
Yeah. And also take breaks. If
Yeah.
it's not, you're not beholden to anyone, even if you're doing a project where you set a schedule, where we said we were a quarterly print magazine, but 10 years later, only 20 issues came out. You know what I mean? We did our best. I think that it's important to make sure that you take care of yourself, especially when you're doing a community-based project that you're not getting paid for, that you're working like a full-time or more job. Self-care falls away, and then you feel like, when people get upset about something, because, inevitably, most of us are queer in this room, sometimes the queer community can get a little upset that you're giving them something, And when they do, it's hard not to take it personally when you're making this altruistic kind of offering, and then you're like, no, you guys got it wrong, because I was just trying to, and they're like, you didn't do it right. And you're like, fuck me, I hate this, but I have to do it. And I think it's important to figure out how to take care of yourself through that. How do you do it?
Definitely.
That's not about.
I know, but
I cry.
But I think that if you have a vision to do something, don't just do it. I think.
So don't think too hard. Just, yeah.
Yeah, we didn't think about it. We were just like, we're
Not
going to
at
do
all.
it. And we didn't have any obstacles that we could see. And I think that that's why we did it. And I think in general, the reason that I've done anything in my life is because I don't think about the obstacles. I have no regrets of things that I wish I did. I only have regrets of things I wish I hadn't said.
Or things you haven't tweeted.
I don't tweet. I can't tweet. That's why I can't have a podcast.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Okay. What do you, now that this is done, that the magazine is done, and you guys finished the book, what are you guys on to now?
Well, we've been working jobs for years now, but it's it doesn't seem like it's ever been part of the conversation because this is all that has been visible and all that matters. But I wrote a young adult book that I'm trying to rewrite and then get out into the world. And I also I co-wrote a film about Billy Tipton, the trans jazz musician, that is in pre-production for a Canadian production company. And I'm just working in the TV film world in that realm.
Cool.
What about you? What are you doing?
So with OP closing, it feels like it's not closing. It's going to be forever in this book, but in book form. But I think for me now, it kind of frees up this space mentally to think about what's the next iteration of OP, and I'm really not doing anything yet with it, but I'm thinking about how do trans men and cis men start getting into conversation about how to be more intentional and better men, because I think that trans men are kind of excluded from most conversations at this point. They're not centralized in any conversation, and I think that there's this large movement of taking a hard look at how shitty men are, and I think that trans men being involved in that conversation could actually shift the way that men relate to other men. I started doing this camp called Camp Lost Boys. I do it with 2 other people. Justin's here. Shout out to Justin. He and I and one other dude started this camp. We're on to the 4th iteration of it, and it's a separatist space for trans men or men of trans experience. And I've got to say, it's like the most healing and profound experience I've ever had. And I think that what I was saying about missing that space of OP parties, this feels like a more like softer, gentler, longer version of that, where we all come together in the woods and hang out and go to a summer camp together, archery, high ropes, like summer camp shit, and then like real deep conversations. Jameson Green opens the whole thing up by telling an oral history of the trans male movement and talks about that experience. And to see 100 guys around a campfire with him telling the story from 18 to 75-year-olds all together is the most profound thing that I've ever experienced. So that's kind of what I'm working on. I'm not making it a business yet, but I keep pushing the 2 dudes that I'm with to be like, come on, you guys, don't you want to make this a business? Let's like dedicate our lives to doing this. But I think I'm slowing my roll and understanding from past that we're at the 3rd one, and already we're kind of hearing whispers of like not doing it right, where I'm like, oh, what's that? I have a lot of PTSD from doing projects in the queer community, if I'm being honest. So I'm trying to slowly ease into that and understand what that would be like to just hold that space and keep doing that space. And we're trying to figure out how to get funding to make it even more affordable. We keep the costs really low, but we want to make it as affordable so everyone who needs that space, because everyone who comes to that space is like, whew, I did not realize how desperate I was to be around other men of trans experience and have these conversations. Right, dudes who have gone to the camp? Amos came to the last camp.
It was fun.
It was nice.
I did archery for the first time. It was really cool.
Oh my God, I just want an animated series with you guys. Okay, let's bring up some contributors. There's some folks in the audience that were in the book. Alex Blue Davis, Texas Isaiah, Emerson Whitney, and Ryan Casada are all here. You guys want to come up? I'll read your bios. How's that? And I think I'm going to give up my chair. And there's some chairs. No, would you put those 2 chairs out? Alex Blue Davis is an American actor and singer-songwriter. He's best known for his role as Dr. Casey Parker on Grey's Anatomy, NBD, the first recurring trans-masculine character played by a trans man on primetime TV. And Davis is also known for his music, having toured nationally and released a number of albums, including his recent EP, Songs for Surgery. Where is he? He's right here. That's him. Texas Isaiah's work explores gender, race, and sexuality by inviting the sitter to participate in the photographic process. The invitation constructs a space to begin and continue collaborative visual dialogues about legacy, self-empowerment, emotional justice, protection, and topophilia, which is the effective bonds between people and place. You learned something. And that's you. Hello. Great to meet you. Emerson Whitney is the author of Heaven and Ghost Box. Emerson teaches in the BFA Creative Writing Program at Goddard College and is a postdoctoral fellow in gender studies at USC. There's Emerson right there. And Ryan Casada is an award-winning singer-songwriter, actor, performer, writer, LGBTQ activist, and motivational speaker based here in LA. And this is Ryan here on the end. Cool. Thanks for being here, you guys. I guess I just want to know, like, what was, I'm really curious to hear, like, what was everyone's first experience of learning about original plumbing? Like, what were your impressions, and how did you get involved contributing your work into the magazine? I guess.
Okay. Hi, my name's Ryan Casada, and I feel, like, really honored to be here, I'll be honest. And I had started coming out around the time that Original Plumbing came out, and during that time there was literally there was nothing. I mean, there was no visibility anywhere. There was no trans people on TV that you saw. You could barely like find someone online. There was like 6 YouTubers. There's like 5 top surgeons in the entire country. Like, it was a different time. And I mean, if you said you were transgender, most people would be like, what is that? And now you could say you're trans, you know? So for me, it was, first of all, I was a young teenager, and getting a copy of Original Plumbing was not easy to do when you're a young teenager. And I remember having the copies. I could still remember exactly where I kept them in my room so that, like, my mom would not see them and stuff. Like, and it was the first time that I actually got to see myself. And there's been, you know, the magazine has represented so many different types of trans men, and I think that was what was so beautiful about it, because for someone like me, I've never went on testosterone, and for me, I always felt included when I looked at the magazine, because it is so diverse. So definitely, like, pick up a copy of the book. Reading that changed my life, and I'm forever grateful for you guys. Thank you. It's historic. Get the book. Thank you.
Are we just going down the line? Is that okay? All right, cool. I'm so grateful for this as well, and I'm really honored to be here. And look at all these folks. Look at this. It's great. Thank you all for being here. Yeah, I was. I don't know when I first heard of OP. Honestly, it just seemed to like permeate my world. Like it just sort of soaked into my life. And I was living. What I do really remember is I was living rurally. I was living with one other trans person in the middle of nowhere on an island that was super far away from everything we can think of right now. And we would bust it open and get really pumped. And that was really lovely in a lot of ways, because I think I also, you know, I've also not been on T, and or I tried it once. It's a long story. Yeah. But I think one of the things for me was that I really didn't feel like I could be like sexy or cute or happy with how I embodied this, whatever this is. I really didn't feel like anyone wanted to see me, honestly, because I didn't really want to see myself for a lot of the time. But for some reason, when I would engage with your work and see other people doing this, it made me feel more like, okay, you know, maybe I can look at myself as lovingly as I look at these other people. So it's been important for me. Thanks.
Oh my gosh. I think this is going to be this. Yeah. So here.
Lean over you awkwardly. Gosh, I mean, it's similar to you both. It was a Google search that my wife performed because I would not look up trans guys. Yeah, I was like, no, this is overwhelming. I want to be on the island with Emerson. Like, I don't want to be doing this. And she was like, no, you have to watch this YouTube video, and you have to look at this and this magazine, and look, you're not the only one, and this and that. Like, clearly I needed her to make this happen. And, I mean, I don't think that's true, but I was ready to transition, and it was 2007. So you started in 2009. Yeah. So I started, and then I had been on to like a year and starting to feel better about myself. And I remember looking at the magazine and being like, how do I get in it? Okay, there's a community. I want to be a musician. I'm going to exploit the shit out of this. Didn't happen. I just wasn't ready to be a part of it. And here I am, 10 years later, in the book. I made it. I mean, I feel really honored. It's crazy when I walked in, and because now I'm in an isolated world of children and a home, and I'm very much an adult, which is a whole other island I never expected to be on, like even alive, you know what I mean? So I came in, and it like flooded back, like I felt a little starstruck. Like I looked at you guys as these self-realized trans men. Like it wasn't just about, I want to be in the magazine. I suddenly had that feeling like, oh, I want to be that. How do I get to be that and feel okay enough with myself to be in the buff, in a magazine? Like I couldn't even fathom it. I still don't. Props. No, it's different. You went through, you changed, you evolved. Oh, good. I'm glad to know that. Yeah, and so anyway, I'm very happy to be here and so happy for you guys. You want to switch with me?
Hello. I don't quite remember. I remember where I was. I've been trying not to get too emotional looking back at those photos. So I think I was creating work, or beginning to think about like legacy and how trans folks were being photographed. And so thinking more about the process of, seeing images, and that's beautiful, but also what's going on behind, the scenes of that. And I think I was just like, I was working on my first ever solo project, and I had just co-founded like my first queer and trans house in Crown Heights, Brooklyn. It was on Nostrand and St. Mark's. And, just really feeling so overwhelmed because I didn't have access to the language around how I wanted to exist yet. And so I was on Google a lot, on not LiveJournal, whoa. Tumblr, YouTube, and there wasn't a lot of content during that time, but there was a slight emergence of trans folks in media, so like Janet Mock and Laverne Cox, and I think that like maybe you had reached out to me, or I like found y'all on the Google searches, and you asked me to be a part of it, and I remember thinking like, oh, this is a very, very beautiful thing, because I think I was also reading Courtney Ryan Ziegler, who's an amazing doctor and genius who lives in Oakland. And so, I was just reading a lot of, reading content, but, not a lot. And so I think being a part of, those two issues, one was my face on the cover, which was really emotional, because I think I resonate with what a lot of people have been talking about around, perhaps not feeling very desirable, very loved, very seen, and then also thinking about what that would look like, And so when I saw that, I told my mom, and I think it really settled a lot of the disturbances that I was going through during that time. And then I photographed Chris. Yeah, Chris, and it was, what is it, the skateboarding? It was the board issue.
Stiff issue.
Yeah, and to photograph this, other Black trans man who had a partner and a family. They had their dog. I think that shoot made me realize the possibilities of family and community that I can obtain for myself, and so to be able to be a part of that process and to even think about, I think, also just like my first editorial shoot, so to be able to think about how I can contribute to, the legacies of trans folks in photography, and how, I was kind of chosen to be brought in to be a part of this very beautiful entity, really changed my life and very much pulled me out of the deep sea of what it really feels like when you are coming into yourself and when you're falling into your body, and how beautiful that is, but just how much just shit comes with that because of just the world that we live in. So thank you so much. Truly, this is very beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you. My God, you guys. Tears. Tears up here. All right, we have time for some questions from the audience. Yeah?
Were the voices what? We included older trans guys from the get-go.
Maybe not the first issue.
Red Jordan, what issue was he in?
The fourth.
Okay.
But he's probably one of the oldest, the eldest. And Jameson.
I think they were grateful to be a part of it. I think that, like, I'm obsessed with preserving queer history because no one else does. Like, it's up to us to preserve the legacy of the people who came before us and honor it. And I think that, like, so it was like Body Alchemy, a lesser-known book by Lauren Cameron, Self-Portraits and Portraits of Other Guys. That was a Bible for me. I clung to that. And then The Phallus Palace came out in 2003 by Dean Catula, I think is how you say his last name. Lesser known, but also images of trans men. But up until that, those two things, and then OP. So like what Ryan was saying is like, people were just like, wow, this exists. This is so cool. Like people of all generations got behind it. The mailings.
Oh my God, 100% the mailings. We never did that right. We always were, like literally hand addressing hundreds of envelopes.
It's not a joke.
Like we're not even kidding. I mean, later years I figured out a spreadsheet situation in Google Docs for subscribers, so I would just print these sheets out, but then I'd have to cut them individually and then tape them. So it's like, because even if I printed it out on sticker paper, it would come off, so I'd have to tape over it anyway. So we fucked that up from the beginning. We never got that right. But what did we do good?
I really want to think the diversity of voices and experiences. I feel
like
really proud of that, and I feel proud of like honoring the people that we did that. When we first started, when he had butcher block paper up on his bedroom wall, which was also our office, and we wrote like themes and made a list of people we wanted in each theme issue. And that first brainstorming session that we had, where we were like putting a business plan together, which was just a brainstorm on a butcher paper. We said the hero issue, and that was what we were working towards. And I think that like. We knew that we couldn't release that the first year because, like, what is this? The hero issue, right? So we wanted to work towards that. And then it was right in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We like honored Lou Sullivan on the cover. Janet Mock is in there. Kate Bornstein's in there.
Jameson Green.
Photos by Catherine Opie of all the a bunch of trans men that she photographed.
Old FTM international newsletters that we got the entire archive for because it was sitting in someone's garage, and now it's sitting in my garage.
No, it's in my closet.
I have a box of it too.
Oh my God! Okay.
So it's scattered. We need to donate that. We need to archive it because we offered to archive it for them too, and for the same reason that we left some things out of this. People don't want that disclosed, but to have those like one-page leaflet printed, it was so cool. Yeah, I think we did a good job of preserving history, and then like accidentally made history.
Yes.
Yeah, it being history. Remember that?
I think I went to a website that was LGBT bookstores. And I went and I emailed everyone individually, and I said, do you want to order any of this magazine that we have coming out? I really talked it up. And then they started placing their orders. And so literally distribution was done by us, and then like invoicing them and like getting paid 50% of the time. And wasting money by sending it internationally, and it would never arrive. Like spending like $50 to send like a box of a box of things.
She's horrified.
I know our friend is horrified that we're like so silly, but
if anyone knew.
Yeah, no, we literally did it all by researching, emailing, reaching out ourselves. Now we have a distributor. We did at the end Small Changes, which did just some stuff in San Francisco and Seattle.
Didn't Good Vibes for a while too? They stocked it up.
They would. I mean, yeah. There's some bookstores and places that would always get like a standing order. For a while, yeah. AK Press did. Good Vibes
Yeah.
would sell it. And then all local bookstores, only local bookstores across the country.
I think we had an inside joke. It's fine, right?
What? I don't
Just
know.
a lot
What
of
is the joke?
I beg of you. Because there was a lot of begging that happened of
Please pay us.
please pay us, please universe, I beg of you. Just
But
quietly.
it's so hard though for a lot of smaller bookstores. Some of the smaller bookstores, they didn't have much of a. They wouldn't keep track either. As to I'd send them 10 copies, and then 6 months would go by. They'd be like, oh, we sold a few copies. We'll send you a check for $8. And it was oh, okay. And then I would not keep track. I had a binder of how many. It was just not good. It was not a good way
binder,
for
not a
physical binder
spreadsheet.
on written with pencil.
Just a
and
scrap
pen.
paper, just
No, it was.
a little torn piece of.
No, it was a binder, and then for a while
No,
I
no, I'm
taped
kidding.
it onto my desk so that it wouldn't go away. So it was
The
staring
moral
at
of this is that you all can do anything, right? I find this very inspiring.
Thank you. Yeah.
Just don't expect to get the money to get paid
Again,
for it.
don't put this this is daunting, right? We talk about all this, and everyone who's inspired to go home and make a magazine is fuck that. Don't think about any of this. None of this actually matters. If you're truly meant to do it, you'll just do it. You'll find the energy. You'll find the way. Grit, gumption, blah blah blah. None of it. None of this business stuff actually matters.
Did we answer the question?
For all of you who have been in the magazine at some point, I'm wondering what the difference was when you had Rocco and Amos doing interviews and photos of you than other experiences you've had with people that were not trans men doing those same sort of projects with you.
So when I was super young, so I think you guys were probably afraid to interview me because I was a young teenager. So as soon as I turned 18 is when all the older trans guys started talking to me basically. But I remember it was right after I turned 18, I met you guys in real life at the Philadelphia Trans Health Conference, and I was giving the keynote speech that year, and you guys came, and to me that was that showed me wow, to me you guys were I was oh my god, they came to hear me speak, it was cool. And then you took my picture, and I wrote something for it years later. I think I was maybe 21 at the time, but it was something I wanted to be a part of so badly, but I was not old enough to be a part of it. And even just I showed up at the OP party in Philly, and I was trying so hard to get in, and you tried to get me in, and they just would not let me in. I made my mom Mom, please tell them I won't even drink.
It's fine. There's other people who aren't overage too. Just let them
Yeah, they would not let me in, but the security guy. So I never got to go to any of the parties because I was too young. But for me, being in the magazine, I just had a photo my chest with my scars showing and stuff, and yeah, and it was just it felt, I don't know, there's nothing that was altered. I wasn't worried about that. It's just and I've been in the media a little bit, and definitely my first experience was on Larry King, and the interview was called "The Secret Life of Transgenders" in 2009. So, and even just a few months ago, the New York Times were asked me if I had bottom surgery, and I was why do you need to know that? So it's just that's the type of it's still going on today. We still need to educate people, and I for me, I take that time. I told them hey, don't ask trans people this, and maybe I might lose that interview, but who cares? Educate someone first, and put the community first is always been my thing. So and obviously Original Plumbing has always done that, and that's a lot of respect for that. So thanks.
Should we do this again? You want me to go? Do you guys want to go? Okay. No, I'm okay. All right. Yeah. There's so much to say about this, actually. I think a lot about trans representation in media, and actually, at the time that I was in the issue, I think, or maybe it was a little bit later, but it was around then that I was doing the thing on the island I was talking about. I was interviewed by this dude from ESPN because I was literally reporting on children's sports. That was my job. I was a reporter. And I was on this island reporting on children's sports. And the guy from ESPN was like, transgender's tipping point, like really, really so into it and wanted to know all about me and all this stuff. And it just, it so regularly feels, of course, exoticizing and fetishistic and really boring, honestly, super boring. And when I'm engaging with you all or when we're all engaging with each other, like tonight I was not anxious about coming here at all. And pretty much every other time I'm asked to come up for something, I'm so worried because not only do I speak for myself, but I speak for our community because usually there's one or two of us. And that is so much pressure, and it's also so it's so frustrating actually because it shouldn't be me speaking for a group of people that is not homogenous at all. So yeah, it's really wonderful to be able to kind of be inside the echo chamber and not necessarily having people bounce their fetish off of me. So.
Great question. I'm sitting here thinking about how many times I've been interviewed. Not many. 2 of them have been with Amos. And because I read those interviews, I saw those interviews. I saw what trans people were asked, and I ran away. I didn't want to be asked. I didn't want to talk about it. I don't want to sing about it. No. I was, when Amos, he interviewed me for Candy magazine when I was still trying to do music. And, I'm doing it now, but I took a big break to study acting. Because I just needed to kind of work at a retail place, walk my dog, be a guy for a little while. So I actually was stealth for quite some time. And even though I had presence online, nobody was calling me for an interview. So when I met you, that was right before I went into hiding. And, it wasn't really, I was here, I was in LA. I had some sort of online presence on YouTube, but it was a kind of joke. So I felt so comfortable with Amos. I remember thinking, oh, this isn't so bad. Like, we're just having a conversation about my obsession with Hillary Duff and how, how I remember New Kids on the Block. He reminded me today. And, I talked about my dad, which is, it wasn't an easy thing for me to talk about, but talking about my dead actor father is actually easier than talking about being trans for me. So I could roast chat with you, and I don't even know if you asked me any trans questions.
I don't think so. No.
No. There was nothing really. Because it was a trans magazine about how people in the trans community are people. What are they into? What do they look like? What do they like to wear? Like, what do they look like when they are themselves? What do they want to show the world? Like, it's not. There wasn't analyzation about it at all. So that made me feel better. Like, if I decided I wanted to be in entertainment, I would just call Amos and be like, hey, I have to do an interview for this magazine. Will you do it with me? And since then, I feel like I am growing up at a time where now it's safer to do interviews with people. I feel like people like Amos and Rocco laid the groundwork for what it could be to interview a trans person, what the proper way to do it is, how to respect a person and ask them the right questions. And this interview was just so fun. I got to talk about how I survived, and how my life is happy. Like, what are the great things that happened and how I got here, not what my body looks like Ryan said. So I am excited to. I did want to say I had a director say to me, "I'm so excited you're in this," and this is right after I did the interview with you, and right when I decided I'm gonna go work for Forever 21. Like, I can't do this anymore, and I'm gonna PA at a reality TV show. She was like, "God, it's so interesting. I look so hard at you, and I can see the girl in there, and you're so fascinating. Like, you're both." I'm like, no, at no point did I say I'm both. Those people exist. There is a community of non-binary people out there. Do not look at me and call me fascinating. But I couldn't do that because I was a doormat and thought I had to be quiet. And now we don't have to be quiet anymore, which is great. We're at a bookstore. I actually can't really believe it. So thank you, Amos and Rocco, for laying the groundwork.
All right. I think you were the first trans person to interview me, that first one, and I thought it was amazing because it was just about the work that I was making, you know? And so it allowed me to think about more of the work I was making instead of like the way that I was thinking about my body, which isn't a bad thing, but I think I was just kind of like spiraling out at that point. And it also set a precedent of how I should be interviewed, you know? So I think, and I do get interviewed a lot, so, and I'm kind of a fire mouth, so, so, you know, I do get asked questions, and I think that when you first interviewed me, it gave me the agency to just say no. So I tell people no, like, I'm not gonna answer this question isn't appropriate, or this question is boring, like, can we talk about this? So I feel like I take ownership over my interviews because of being interviewed by you in a way that made me feel like a person, like a creative person, that I didn't have to discuss my work about, you know, and have it tied to these things that, you know, people want them to be locked inside of, you know, and it just like allowed me to have, you know, like I said, more agency around how I'm being interviewed now. And I think that interviews are shifting a little bit. You know, there are, you know, more queer, not that many trans folks in, you know, higher positions, you know, within magazines, but I feel like that is shifting, and that's allowing people to just be a little bit more intentional about how we talk to people, about what they are doing in the world and how they are existing in the world. So yeah, you were my first. My first interview, yeah, so I appreciate it.
Can you imagine if trans people interviewed cis people the way that trans, like, just flipping it, just being like, oh, so you're an Olympic athlete. Tell me about how you go to the bathroom. Anyone who's a journalist here, I know there's a handful of them who are trans. I hope that you do that. Just flip it. Start flipping it. How does your mother feel about your gender identity? Oh, you wrote a book? That's so sweet.
There are more questions? Or, well, yes. Oh, hold on. There's somebody who hasn't asked already, so yeah.
Something like that. I think it would have been less stressful if we could have paid ourselves.
Yeah. If we had like created a foundation of a business and
Imagine a
hired
world.
people, be able to pay people, you know, like, and
Imagine
have
if-
people take over.
If she could have done the books
I know,
for
if
us.
Beth Pickens could have
and
done the books.
And we had like
She's
people
horrified
who
by our
did the
experience.
mailing for us, and then all we had to do was focus on
On the creative stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would have been great. So yeah.
Do you have suggestions? Okay.
I'm ready to start a GoFundMe page for the man of the cloth. Yes, I want to know what the shaman has to say. I want to see his picture. But also, if I ever have extra money, it's yours.
Don't be shy. If you have extra money, toss it our way. We have back issues too. You could support it that way. We are in a little debt if you guys want to support OP. I beg of you. It's called the callback.
Many of us are starting to create, and there's just so much more material. Like, remember when there was like one or like 5 books, like, whatever. And now there's so much, and there's so many trans people creating stuff. I want to know how you think we should talk about criticizing ourselves in a positive way, like for the future and for now, right now. Because I know, like, I heard you when you said that it was really hard, and people were so critical, and it gave you PTSD from it.
Cannibalistic.
Yeah, like really mean sometimes. And so I want to talk about, you know, for all of the people that are in our community creating things, I'm sure a lot of people here do that. And then a lot of people that are consumers of it, because so yeah, what do you all think about how to have that conversation in a respectful, positive way?
Do you mean like if people are doing problematic things? Or just you don't like their stuff? If you don't like their stuff, just don't support it. That's the best. Yeah, it's none of your business. They're making it for someone else, right?
I know exactly. Oh, it came to me.
Do you have an
I
answer
mean,
for that?
I do not have an answer,
Yeah.
but I do think it's it feels like an extremely important question. I mean, I posted this event tonight on Instagram, and I had a bunch of people who were associated with TGIP in the Bay, Miss Major's project. And they were like, well, you should also talk about the fact that there was a conflicting party in 2011 or something.
And that, in effect, is why we slowed the magazine down.
And at the same time, in my experience, so regularly do I want to show up for my community and also make things in the community. And at the same time, I recognize all the access I have as a person with the skin color I have, and as a person who, is mobile and all of these things. I do live with a disability, and I can make a whole list of other things that I have that limit my access too. And we all actually occupy those positions. Most of us in this room occupy a dominant and a targeted position. And to be able to think about the ways that we interact with both all the time is so essential. But as to being kind of torn down for trying, I don't have experience with that at this point. I mean, I spend a lot of the time I guess, in education. And so I talk about this from that angle. But I would love to hear more about, what we can think of as a community in terms of resilience, too. Because I do think, I personally am deeply invested in running back every single day into the burning building that is white supremacy. And, hegemony. I mean, we could just go on and on about that. And my commitment to that will sometimes put me on the firing line, but that's okay for me.
I want to just say to what you're saying about there's an abundance of stuff. Great. The more, the better. And if it doesn't speak to you, make something that does. And don't be afraid of other people not having it not resonate with them. Then it's not for them. And that's okay. And I think as long as we're not harming someone, there's a difference between making something that maybe triggers you, and then maybe honor your trigger and figure out what it is and turn inward, turn to someone who is your community. Call someone in, have a conversation. Why did that happen like this? There are so many ways to have a dialogue, but call-out culture is so pervasive and so damaging and damning and creates the PTSD that I was talking about because there's no actual desired outcome other than to just shut you down. And if someone's trying to make something, that's incredibly vulnerable. So any queer person who's making something is being vulnerable. Anybody who's making something is being vulnerable, but particularly if you come from a marginalized community, if you are a marginalized person, if you're intersectional identity and you're putting yourself out there like that, that's so fucking vulnerable. And to have strangers attack you for doing something, expressing your reality is basically all we're doing when we're making art, or trying to translate it to other people to be able to relate to see, do you feel this? I feel this. I'm not alone. I don't want to be alone. And then have the vultures come and pick at you, and they're not doing anything, right? They're not making anything. They're just making a mess of you offering this piece of your vulnerable self. So I don't have any time for critiques. There's no critiquing. I'm not in a museum. This isn't in a museum. This is an offering to a community that has very few offerings. If it doesn't resonate with you, I'm sorry. I hope you make something that does resonate with you and that you put it out into the world and not just as a comment or a DM.
We have time for a couple more.
He said he has a fire mouth I want to hear.
I don't know the full
No, I'm just playing. I'm just playing.
If there's more, we have time for a few more questions. Yeah.
I really loved Trish's question before, and I just wanted to follow up on it. So, for all the journalists who had asked the panel bad questions before, if they were to pick up a copy of the original plumbing book and to read through it, what do you hope they would learn?
Don't ask people private questions about things that have nothing to do with what you're interviewing them about.
Yeah, I don't know if people would learn anything from it. If their mindset is to ask specific questions, they'd probably look at it and be like, "Oh, great, this is boring," or you know what I mean? They think
opposite of ooh, look at all these bodies.
Right. Yeah.
Or they probably don't pick up the magazine because they're too interested in asking how the bathroom happens. That question happens so much. Can I say what you said the first time someone asked you?
Sure.
Or you say?
Oh, I had a journalist ask me
From the New York Times.
No, it was the New York Magazine,
Okay.
I think. And they asked me what bathroom I use, and I told them the litter pan. They did not print it, though. He didn't print it. He did not print it.
Too bad. It would have changed. It would have changed everything. That would have changed history.
Yeah.
I wonder if maybe you have a story about what you brought up earlier, being in conversation with a cis man who learned something about masculinity different from any of you.
You wanna? Okay.
They still don't talk to me. I don't know.
There's this thing called the Everyman Project that's just popping up. They're getting a lot of attention right now. And I took a look at their website because after this camp situation that I'm doing, I was like, God, I just want to be in like small circles with men to heal my man hating. Because I went from like being a man hater to then healing my shit by entering into a male body that's being read as male all the time to being a fully actualized man, and then going back 360 degrees to resting in a place of deep-seated man-hating again. And these camps, I'm not even joking, Valerie Solanas was like the Bible for me, but I am at a place now, though, that the camp healed my relationship to men, because with 100 other men who struggled with their own man-hating and their own very intentional paths to maleness, I realized that, like, there's also like really beautiful aspects of being a man. So then I was like, what would it be like to be a trans guy in these like men's groups? So then me and a few other guys started going to other men's groups, like the Mankind Project, and they like smudged us before, and I got burned badly, and I was like, God damn it! See, now even with the smudge, their men are still burning me. But I reached out to every man because it appealed to me, except that it was all white bearded dudes, like no diversity at all. So I reached out to them and I wrote them an email being like, there's no diversity. If I were to come to your camp or your excursions, would I feel uncomfortable? Here's who I am, here's what it's about. And they were honest. They were like, yeah, it's pretty white, it's really straight, and we've never had a trans guy. And I was like, how do we change that, and how do we get into conversation? So I'm starting those conversations with them now to try and figure out how to integrate trans men into those kind of groups so we have an actual dialogue and real representation of every man in these kind of circles. I think it's just gonna happen in small pockets. There are people doing that type of work. I think Thomas McBee has a column on Teen Vogue right now that he's interviewing men about problematic masculinity. I think it's just more of us like going there. And sometimes this might be an unpopular thing to say. I'm known for those things, I guess. But trans men are often like asked, like, okay, you're a man now, so please be quiet. Your voice isn't necessary in this conversation, which is it's a thing that happens. And in those moments, I think if that's true, and that's in the queer community, if that's true, let's take our voices to a community that could use them, and it could be beneficial, which is to cis men spaces. Like if we, as men of trans experience, bring our voices into that conversation, that's gonna change things. It would be uncomfortable as fuck, but.
I think that's all for our question and answer, and then we're going to have a signing and a milling about and making new friends. Can we clap for original
Yeah, we're also, if you guys have friends in San Francisco, we're going to be at Green Apple Books on the Park on May 31st, and in Portland, June 2nd at Powell's. And I think for anyone who wants to hang out, we're not having an OP party, but there's a bar a couple blocks down called The Study on this street. Yeah, let's all meet there if anyone wants to hang out. Let's take over the bar. And someone in the front row just said they'll be taking their shirt off, so you won't be alone. Thanks, everybody.
You've been listening to the Skylight Books author reading series. Don't forget, you can listen to this and all of our other great podcasts at skylightbooks.com. Thanks again for stopping by, and we hope to see you soon.